Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Blueshirt's Bandwidth. I'm your host, Joe the Tank Fortunato, joined, as usual, by my co-host, Eric We're Tanking Now Cone. Eric, how are you?
Tank is back on, Joe.
Tank is back. We're back, baby. It was crazy, but we're back.
It was a fun, crazy couple of games, but we are back on track. Things are as they should be. The Rangers are losing and moving as expeditiously as possible to the bottom of the standings. We shall hope.
Correct. It's like you have a really good one night stand. Maybe you spend a couple of nights somewhere, a little long weekend in Boca Raton or something like that. And it's just over, and it's got to be over. And now it's over, and we're back. Episode number 76. Eric told me I should get one of them. Oh, our good friend, Mr. Nashville, Brady Shea, wore 76.
Brady Shea?
Did he not? Yes, okay.
That is correct. Brady Shea wore 76 from 2016 through 2020.
Cannot think of the other person who wore 76.
From 2021 through 2023, 76 was worn by Johnny Brodzinski.
And then he switched?
He switched, yes.
I don't even remember him as that. Even now, you telling me this, I don't remember him as that. But
whatever. I barely remember it myself, but it, according to Hockey Reference and team jersey numbers, it is a thing.
All right. Well,
so
anyway, here you are. Thank you all for being here. Worth noting that Eric and I are recording Monday night after the Rangers lost to the Los Angeles Kings 4-1. Plenty to dissect about that game. Not so much about the game itself, but about some of the players that were in it. Either way, $85 a year gets you all your ad-free access to the New York Rangers at BlueshirtBanter.com. $40 a year gets you access to our Discord and the question thread, in which you can post comments there to ask questions, which we will read in the show every single week. BlueshirtBanter.com, as I mentioned, Facebook.com/BlueshirtBanter, YouTube.com/BlueshirtBanter, Twitter.com/BlueshirtBanter. We learned that BlueshirtBanter.com/BlueshirtBanter just brings you to Blueshirt Banter. So you could do that too if you really wanted to. Follow us in all those places. Leave us 5 stars. Leave us a nice review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to us, wherever you watch us. Eric and I are in hotels right now, so you get a little bit of Blueshirt Bandwidth after dark. Worth noting, this is the only time that Eric and I could record this week, so we are recording on Monday, but what could possibly happen between now and Thursday? Famous last words, as always. But
right. There's a game on Wednesday night, but at the very least, we would have been recording over the game on Wednesday night. So there's not really going to be any action that's going to happen between now and then. We're post-trade deadline, so it's not as if there's some kind of trade that is going to go down. So there's not a lot that's going to change between now and Thursday morning when you're going to be listening to this. And now that I have said that, I'm sure something earth-shaking is going to happen that I can't even possibly, Mike Sullivan is going to resign or something.
Couldn't he almost resigned after they brought everybody back in the first period today for half a second. He was second period, maybe?
Yeah,
he was not
second
having
period.
It. So
yeah,
there is that. But yes, we are here. Let's get to our good friend Charlie, the coward, and we'll move on from there.
The podcast Ombudsman Report for Blueshirt Bandwidth episode 75, where, of course, every week Charlie will listen to the latest episode of the podcast and correct the record on anything that we get wrong, starting with JT Miller's contract. It was asked, what would getting out of the JT Miller contract look like? Miller has 4 more seasons after this one left on his contract. His full no movement clause extends for 1 more season before becoming a 15-team no-trade list during the 2027 offseason. If you wanted to buy him out this offseason, you'd see significant savings for the next 4 years before 4 seasons of a $1.9 million dead cap hit, during which time the cap would likely continue to increase. Of course, considering that there isn't anybody worth signing as a free agent this offseason, you might as well let him play out the next year of his contract and then make a decision in 2027 as to trade him to one of the 16 teams not on his no-trade list or buy him out. And Charlie helpfully includes the details of Miller's contract and what a buyout in both summer 2026 and 2027 would look like for the Rangers. Alexei Yashin rookie card. Eric mentioned having an Alexei Yashin rookie card worth $20, being offered, quote, a few bucks for it. If Eric had sold his Yashin rookie card for $3 at the height of Yashin Mania in 1994, following his Calder Trophy win and first All-Star selection, and then invested that money in the S&P 500, he would have about $78. The Yashin rookie card is available on eBay for $2.75. Alexis Lafreniere. Joe said that, quote, "We're seeing a completely different Lafreniere since Panarin was shipped out to Los Angeles." In the 13 games since Panarin left the Rangers lineup, note, of course, this will not include the Kings game that just happened before we are recording this. In the 13 games since Panarin left the Rangers lineup, Lafreniere has 9 goals and 6 assists for 15 points, including a hat trick against Calgary and a 2-point game against the Winnipeg Jets since Joe made this comment. Moving Lafreniere for Shane Wright has been discussed quite a bit this season as a sort of change of scenery swap for underwhelming high draft picks. Although Lafreniere is 2 years older than Wright, he's at a significantly better per season per evolving hockey and projects out better per JFresh. Urho Vakanainen. Urho Vakanainen has become somewhat of a punching bag on this podcast and across the Rangers fan base this season. But he has actually performed as a solid defenseman, outperforming Will Borgen, Vincent Iorio, Scott Morrow, and Braden Schneider on an XGAR basis. And he includes the link to that chart. NBA contract lengths. In the discussion on player movement in the NHL, Eric and Joe credited part of the NBA's increased movement of star players between teams on their shorter contract lengths. The NHL allows players to sign extensions of 8 years with their current team and contracts of 7 years as an unrestricted free agent. The NBA allows unrestricted free agents to sign 4-year contracts, and players with, quote, bird rights have been on the team for parts of the 3 seasons prior to the expiration of their contract to sign 5-year extensions. Rangers versus Flames. The podcast was recorded right before the Calgary Flames made their only visit to Madison Square Garden this year. Joe called this game a, quote, must lose, and Eric said that Urho Vakanainen could score 3 goals. The Rangers did not lose, and while Urho Vakanainen did not score 3 goals, Alexis Lafreniere did. In what will likely be the only game that he, Charlie, attends at MSG this season, he forgot to pack his hat before leaving on his business trip. Skating coaches. Joe asked me to find information on New York Rangers skating coaches.
Did I ask
Bray.
Charlie to find anything? I don't think so.
Well, you throw these things out there, and it basically is a clarion
Charlie's a
call
dog.
to him.
We just throw a bone and he goes to hunt.
Dawn Braid is listed as the Rangers skating coach in the team directory, and her LinkedIn has her as a full-time skating consultant for both the Rangers and the Hartford Wolfpack. You might also remember that Barbara Underhill was the Rangers skating coach. She worked with the Rangers in a contract role, notably helping Brian Boyle become a better skater before being hired by the Lightning as their full-time skating coach in 2011. Mika Extra Effort Award. With Sam Carrick being traded, it seems like Mika Zibanejad will run away with the Stephen McDonald Extra Effort Award by default. While I don't want to diminish what Zibanejad has done in his bounce-back season, it does bring to mind this moment from a classic Simpsons episode. She includes the image with Homer saying, "Default! Woohoo! The 2 sweetest words in the English language." And that concludes the Ombudsman.
Tanking again, Eric.
Tank is back on.
Before we talk about that, I want to talk about Panarin a little bit. Panarin obviously returned to the Garden today to great fanfare. We posted the video of the Rangers tribute to him on Facebook, facebook.com/BlueshirtBanter. You'll see it up there right now. I have been remarkably polite to Panarin over this exodus. I think it was a circumstance in which we were all of agreement that the marriage needed to come to an end, not just because of the direction that the Rangers were moving in, but the direction that Panarin was supposedly moving in. There were a variety of comments from the media that the Rangers had provided Panarin with various different options that he did not want. He wanted a lot more money than the Rangers were seemingly going to offer him. We got to a point where it was untenable. The Rangers couldn't lose him for nothing, so they traded him for the underwhelming package of Liam Greentree. Even though I really like Greentree a lot, and a third-round pick that could become a second-round pick based on some conditions that I can't remember right now that I'm sure Charlie will go figure out.
Do you want me to pick nits with this already?
Sure.
It's not underwhelming, right? Like,
Well, that's the next piece. The piece that I was going to say after this was it's underwhelming in the sense of what you would expect for Artemi Panarin, but once you add in the no movement
right.
clause, any return is
I-
expected.
If you're
Like it just
going
is
to,
what it is.
yeah, if you're going to ignore the no movement clause, which you can't
Correct.
in doing this kind of calculus, which is again why I find it so bizarre that there are people who have, since this trade went down, been spinning out about the fact that they didn't get more for Panarin when it was impossible to get more for Panarin because he had a full no movement clause and because at the end of the day said he would only go to one destination. Now, you can wish that things were different. That's totally fine. I'm not telling you that you cannot fantasize about something else happening where Artemi Panarin comes to Chris Drury and says, I'm willing to go to any of the other 31 teams in the league, whoever is going to give you the biggest return. But that didn't happen. So
Correct.
it's not underwhelming when put in proper context and asked compared to what. And the compared to what is that you lose him for nothing.
Sure. So let's to the I fully agree with you. And it was half the point I was going to make at the end. But through this process, and we've talked about this on this very show not that long ago, Panarin, even when he was on the Rangers and it seemed all but determined that he was going to be traded, he was making a lot of really strange comments. Like, I don't know why it's like this. I don't understand what's going on. And you and I spoke about this. Like, sweetheart, you want money. The Rangers don't want to give you that much money in that much term. You decided that the money was more important than the team that you're on. That's fine. But like, business is business. I don't know what else you want out of this. This is a man who rarely, if ever, spoke to the media here in New York, never really spoke about his feelings, was a jokester.
Spoke tongue in cheek when he did, right? It was
Yeah,
like a lot of
like,
jokes about not speaking English like Igor and, just clearly having fun and leaning on the language barrier and the culture barrier to have some fun with it, which, to be fair, I always found amusing. What Igor does too with the like not understanding English being a like running gag with him, I find amusing. And I think all these things are amusing until they're not anymore. And I think with Panarin, some of it, maybe this is where you're going, it's ceased to be.
just don't understand why he's still talking about the Rangers like this. I would have understood if he kept his mouth shut. We're here. He's in Madison Square Garden. Somebody, it might have been Johnny Lazarus made the question or asked the question of him, and he made a comment of like he didn't feel like would you have signed the 211? He was like, well, the Rangers didn't want me. No, dude. If you would have come to the Rangers and accepted that type, if we believe Emily Kaplan's reporting, the New York Rangers went to Artemi Panarin this summer and presented him with a series of options. One of those options was a shorter term deal. I don't know what the money looked like. Maybe it did not look like $11 million at the time. But I am pretty confident if Panarin's camp had said to Chris Drury, I will give you a 2-year, $11 million contract, the Rangers would have taken it. I remember what the question was now. The question was about, did you ever think about going back to the Rangers when you got the 211 offer from LA? And he was like, well, no, they didn't want me. That's not true. And if it is true, like the media seems to be kind of falling over themselves to talk, like allow Panarin to just kind of say this unchecked. I'm sorry. The man is the reason why he's no longer a New York Ranger. He made these decisions. Like, yes, the circumstances sucked. The Rangers are not good this year. They didn't want to give him the money that he wanted. They didn't want to give him the term that he wanted. Neither did anyone else, apparently. And for this turnaround, like, woe is me. Oh, the Rangers didn't want me. I'd love to be here. The fans don't care anymore because the season is bad. Like, I just don't need it anymore from him. It's not cute.
Can I ask you a question?
You can.
If at the time the Kings offered him, pending trade, the 2-year, $11 million per contract, would you have wanted the Rangers to sign him to that deal at that point in time?
I don't know if I would have wanted the Rangers to do it. I would not have been kicking and screaming if they did.
Fair. I don't know that I would have been kicking and screaming either, but the difference is it's not just what the contract was at the end of the day. It's when all of this transpires that
Hmm.
matters along with it. And I am of the mind that if Panarin had been amenable to a 2 by 11 contract at the beginning of the year, he would be signed for 2 more years with the New York Rangers right now. I don't think that is at all where negotiations began. I think he wanted a combination of probably around 5 years and probably around 12, at least as much money as he's making now, if not more, considering the way that the cap is expected to grow. So, again, that is a conversation at a different point in time. Anything within, the off season coming into the first couple weeks of this season is an entirely different conversation than where the Rangers were at when the Panarin trade actually happened. I agree with you that I wouldn't have been in no way beside myself for the Rangers re-signing him to a 2 by 11 deal right at the time that they made that trade. But in the long run, Joe, I think we're probably better off
I agree.
having gotten what they got for Panarin, even if held against a ridiculous absolute standard of what would an Artemi Panarin trade look like if you plugged it into EA Sports NHL 26? Even in that case, I think we're probably better off with Green Tree and the draft picks than Panarin for another 2 seasons. Despite Chip and his kind of sunny reassessments of how the Rangers actually could make this a retool and not an extended rebuild, which was admittedly predicated on the 4-game winning streak that the Rangers had coming into tonight's game against the LA Kings, where they played terribly and lost. I just think they're better off having moved him out and having gotten Green Tree and some picks back, even if that is underwhelming by comparison. So I hear you. Part of it,
I
I will also
agree.
give him. I'll also give him a little bit of an out here, right? So it's you had the trade happen, and then you had a suspension of NHL activity because of the Olympics, and all the attention was focused on that. And we've had about 2 weeks back, right, since the Olympics have ended, and this is his first return to Madison Square Garden. I have a hard time believing that he's going to get asked a lot more questions about the Rangers between now and the end of the year. I think this is probably the high watermark of questions to Panarin about the Rangers. So I'll even indulge his talking about it a little bit. But the biggest thing with that I can't let anybody off the hook for is they didn't want me. No, they did at the beginning of the year at a level of compensation and years that he wasn't willing to say yes to at that time. And the at that time is what really matters in this conversation. And by the time it got to the point where he would take a 2 by 11 deal, it didn't make sense for the Rangers to keep him anymore. So it is somewhat unfair, and to just go with just Artemi Panarin's narrative of this, I think is a little disingenuous.
Fully agree. I don't think it's weird he's talking about it before a game at Madison Square Garden. My issue is the woe is me, like, well, the Rangers didn't want me. It's just not true. And again, a guy who didn't have anything to say to anybody now can't. It's like Truba. It's like Rangers derangement syndrome. Like they just can't. They leave and they're like, oh, we're just gonna talk about the New York Rangers. Like I promise you, you can move on with your lives.
Yeah, see, here's the difference, though, is that I think for Panarin, I think this is probably it, right? Like
I would agree with that.
maybe it gets revisited in the off season a little bit because everybody's going to be looking for content in the off season. So perhaps it comes up again in the off season. I fully expect that Jacob Trouba will never shut the fuck up about the New York Rangers because
Correct.
Jacob Trouba is a piece of shit.
It's just it caught me by surprise. They didn't want me. It's like, no, dude, we have eyes and ears and have witnessed you. We witnessed what happened to get here. Now the Rangers gave him a very nice tribute. He seemed to really enjoy it. He got a nice hand from the crowd. Not the loudest I've ever heard, to be honest with you, but to be fair, again, the Rangers suck and the Garden wasn't exactly like alive. Screwing around with Trocheck in warmups during the tribute, him and Lafreniere were like pushing each other back and forth. It was a little weird. It's like a little surreal. And he made a comment after the game. I don't know if you saw this, where it was like he was nervous about this game all week. That's, by the way, normal shit. Like that's totally that's the stuff that I would expect him to say. And then like I hope that the Rangers trade everybody to LA because I miss everybody. And it's like, yeah, dude, it didn't need to be like this. Now, I agree with you. Long term for the organization, probably for the best that he's gone, get the return that you can get for him, free up time and space for guys like Perreault and Lafreniere to actually kind of gel themselves. Some people didn't understand the tongue in cheek, like, was Panarin holding Lafreniere back? The real commentary there that is not a joke is not that he himself is holding Lafreniere back, but his existence did not allow Lafreniere to get power play one time. And really, once Sullivan started shaking things up, not necessarily top line minutes either. Now, Lafreniere deserved some of that himself, right? He fucked some things up himself. So I get it. But it's hard for me to not look at this as a better long-term outcome. The only case for it have been better to keep Panarin is if this summer there is a mass exodus. Fox wants out, Gavrikov wants out, which again, you and I have had arguments that maybe that's the best thing long-term regardless. Look, Panarin was a great Ranger. I think it is worth noting, and I'm not saying this like pissing the Cheerios, now I'm annoyed. The Rangers didn't really win anything with Panarin. Not the playoff performer that you would have expected for the regular season performances that he had. And this team for the past 18 months was the worst version of themselves, and he was still on the team. I love Artemi Panarin, one of the greatest Rangers I've ever watched, potentially outside of like Jaromir Jagr at the height of his powers with the Rangers, one of the most talented players I have ever watched. I have never seen a player single-handedly take over games the way that Panarin did since Jagr. But again, the Rangers didn't win anything. So now what is the line from Star Wars? Only Siths deal in absolutes or something?
Yes, only Siths deal in
guy.
absolutes, yes.
But I get it. I understand. But it's over. Everybody needs to move on. The Rangers, most of all, need to move on. And Panarin was fine tonight. I think he had an assist. Crazy whiff on a puck and ended up on his ass, which was kind of wild. But he looked fine. He looked happy. He's jovial. He's on a team that may make the playoffs this year. The Rangers are a fucking mess. So let's spin to that. Rangers go on a 4-game winning streak. They moved themselves from second best lottery odds to 5th. That was before they lost tonight. I don't know what the odds look like tonight. Chip has been making the argument that it's okay to lose the draft positioning because it's more important for the Rangers to develop Lafreniere and Perreault and, the kids. And I agree with pieces of that. I think it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow if you have a shitty season like this and you're not getting a top 5 pick in this type of draft. It just sucks. Because what was it for? And you shouldn't need to get to that point to get Perreault and Lafreniere up there. Scott Morrow's not even playing with the Rangers. We've discussed this already ad nauseum. But for me, that 4-game winning streak left this incredible trail of, oh my God, maybe the Rangers are figuring things out. They're fun again. Holy shit, they're starting to enjoy each other's company. This is great. JT Miller comes back. They beat Minnesota. Maybe you should have traded for Trocheck and given up Yurov, fucking Bill Guerin. And you start thinking to yourself, are the Rangers going to get to a point where they think, oh shit, maybe we shouldn't keep burning it down? Maybe we don't trade Trocheck this summer. Maybe the Rangers do make things interesting and fight for a playoff berth, although it would be an extreme long shot. And then they come out tonight and they have 8 shots through the first 45 minutes. Or 10 maybe. And it's, oh, right, this is who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, for the people who are pointing out that, Phil had pointed this out in Media Bites that came out on Sunday that, Laf is doing all of this and the season version of garbage time. well after the Rangers have waved the white flag, they've started trading everybody. They're already focused on not just next season, but a couple seasons down the road because they're retooling or rebuilding or whatever you're going to call it. And there was something to be said for having beaten, Philadelphia and Calgary and a struggling Winnipeg team. But then they beat down pretty convincingly a Minnesota Wild team that is going to go to the playoffs this year. And then they get their asses handed to them by an LA Kings team. And I think this is the reality between now and the end of the season is you don't know what you're going to get in any given game. I think we've seen some fun and some flash, and it was just not as much happening in this game. Even despite the outcome of the Minnesota game, I think they have just looked not nearly as good since JT Miller came back. I honestly think he makes the team worse, or at least the way he's playing this season and the way that he is inserted into the lineup in a position beyond the station he's playing at this year makes the team worse. But
him taking Perreault off the first power play unit is an asinine level of, and then Sullivan plays the well, it's not a demotion. Then what the fuck is it, Micah? What is it?
It's
what
not
is
as if
it if
JT
it's not a
Miller
demotion?
It's not as if JT Miller has earned that first power play position
Correct.
this year, right? It's not as if he was, playing to the level that we expect or hope that JT Miller will play at. He has not been that all season long. And they were actually seeing something. And it was just absolutely, perfect poetic justice that the first goal of the game in the Minnesota game is the second power play unit scoring a goal that
with Gabe Perreault
makes it happen. So, I think in any given game we're going to watch in the, dozen or so that are remaining this season are going to be, you might get that fun Rangers team we saw for the last 4 games, and you might get the Rangers team that we see tonight. And that is just, the hallmark of a team that is, the Vancouver Canucks are bad pretty much every night. And the Rangers, the good news that you've got right now is that they've graduated to inconsistent. That you might get the team that put a beating on Minnesota, but you also might get the team that had 8 shots on goal with about 4 minutes to play in the second period. There's something else to be said too for this is the kind of thing that I just do not get. It was a home game. It was just like they're back to being a team that can't do shit at home. Like they scored 1 goal and they had, did they even get to 20 shots? I'll have to take a look. They got to 22. Finally, with really pouring it on in the third period there. But it's still not able to score. So we're kind of back to the same home doldrums that the Rangers had been in. So yeah, I mean the Rangers as of right now, and again, keep in mind we're recording this late Monday night. They're 29th in the league. They have 64 points. Blackhawks have 61, Calgary 59, and Vancouver 48. You're not catching Vancouver, but if they were to lose consistently and Calgary, Chicago win a couple of games, you're getting back up into high draft pick territory.
It's a lottery for a reason.
Yeah,
and
it is.
Tell that to the Islanders last year.
Yeah,
winning the lottery the way that they did.
Yep.
The other problem, and a couple of people have mentioned this, the way the Rangers have been winning and this 4-game winning streak that was obviously snapped tonight is okay. Perreault, Lafreniere leading the charge is okay. What you don't want is the Igor Shesterkin stealing a game. Vincent Trocheck scores a hat trick. Mika Zibanejad can have offense because he's playing on that line with the 2 children. But all I hear in my head,
because Zibanejad is going to be here for a while, no matter what. So by all means,
all I hear in my head when you're talking about you don't know what Rangers you can get is this is why you don't bet on the Rangers.
Oh yeah,
this is why you don't change the course. You're where you are for a reason. You're thinking about this the right way. Chris Drury actually is making the right decisions to try to burn things down and try to trade his way through this. It's okay. You don't have to be. You don't have to trick yourself into thinking this team is something they are not. Now, to Chip's point, which is, hey, could this potentially like accelerate the rebuild a little bit? Yeah, there is a thought process here where, and again, this is another thing where I don't think people necessarily recognized what was being said. It's not, oh, the Rangers are better now. They've figured things out. They're fine. It's if the Rangers can get to a point where they have Lafreniere playing as the Lafreniere that we've expected him to be, Gabe Perreault playing at the level that we hoped he would play. You keep Adam Fox. You have Vladislav Gavrikov. You have Igor Shesterkin. There are pieces there, like you have the elite defenseman. You have one of the best goalies in the league. You have a top line that's very formidable, and the Rangers actually have a bottom six that's kind of really good too. It's that second line that's the problem. But yeah, maybe it's not that bad. The problem is right now we're making lots of questions, which is Adam Fox going to be here next year? Does Vladislav Gavrikov want to be here next year? What are the Rangers doing with Vincent Trout? There's just too many questions. And it is performances like this against the Kings that remind you that the Rangers are just not there. They are just quite simply not good enough. It just is what it is. And that's okay for where they are. But let's not lose sight of what the Rangers are, please. Just because they won a couple of games in a row. They are still a bottom 5 team in the Tankathon rankings. You're right. They're not catching Vancouver. They're more than likely not catching Calgary. But you can still put yourself in a position where you have the 3rd or 4th best lottery odds and then see what happens. Roll the ping pong balls, baby.
Finishing with the 3rd, 4th, or 5th best lottery odds is probably about what the best you can hope for.
Yep. You're not getting Vancouver. Vancouver is a special kind of
terrible.
Shit. Jim Rutherford has built a special kind of fucking disaster.
The just for fun little context here, the best goal differential in the league is the Colorado Avalanche, plus 84. Just for context, the Rangers are negative 19 goal differential. The Vancouver Canucks, care to hazard a guess what their goal differential is right now?
If the Rangers are minus 19, I'm going to say Vancouver's minus 50.
Minus 75.
And Elias Pettersson has 0 points?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Yep.
So it could be worse, I guess, is the takeaway here? Is that what we're
saying?
It
absolutely. Again, we've talked about this intermittently, but I would not want to trade positions with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I would not want to trade positions with the Vancouver Canucks.
No, not at all.
Not at all. Nothing. Even like at a minimum, one of the things you can say about the Rangers is that they have one of the best goaltenders in the league. And Vancouver has a good goaltender when he can stay healthy, which is never in Thatcher Demko. They've traded Quinn Hughes. You're basically left with Elias Pettersson, who looks like somewhat of both a head case and a disappointment at this point. And other than that, it's like your superstar is Brock Besser. It's not good shakes in Vancouver right now. Like the best that you can say is you've got the Booyams as up and coming players, but if the Rangers are looking a couple seasons out, Vancouver, like optimistically, like 4 or 5 years from now is probably when you're talking. Anytime it's rough.
Jim Rutherford has a microphone in front of his face, he says the stupidest shit you have ever imagined.
Things get worse. Yeah. So do we actually, we could go to a question here because I think it kind of ties into GM analysis. You too, of course, can ask questions if you are a member of Blueshirt Banter. We'll put a question thread up every week, and you can ask questions just like L-Man. He's got a couple here. I'm going to start with, do you still have any faith in Drury, and if so, why? He buys high, e.g. JT Miller, including a first despite his no movement clause, and Kopp sells low, e.g. Booch, Kreider, Kakko, and shows his cards via the memo last year and letter this year, resulting in very limited trade returns. So piggybacking off of this because I think if you actually want a better example of a GM who opening their mouth makes things worse, Jim Rutherford is your guy. Like
For sure.
or he's actually the president, but but whatever, point stands. Um, I think the framing of this question is a little unfair. While I will say that, Joe and I have noted over the course of the last several episodes of this podcast that, our faith in Chris Drury is at the lowest point that it has ever been. And I like, Joe, the way that you have put it, that he needs to prove us right in any of the defenses that we have made of him rather than people need to prove us wrong. I think all of that still stands. Um, I think throwing Cop in there as an example of buying high is just completely out of context. Like
Yeah, I
that was
agree.
that was a trade deadline acquisition that I don't think was an overpay, and I think was actually some pretty good GMing at the trade deadline, considering, again, as I have said before, the biggest thing that I hold against Chris Drury is not what he has done, it is what he did not do, and that was going ahead and just doing what he had to get Jake Gensel. That's the only thing that I think might have made a difference on any of those two teams that made a run to the Eastern Conference Final. But
Well, now having seen
I,
your boy Perot, would you like? I get it because
yeah, I probably
banners
would
fly
have. Yeah, I
forever.
probably, yeah. If the Rangers win a cup that year, then we're not even
Oh
talking
yeah,
about
for sure. If
this.
they win it, but if they don't
So
win a cup and Gensel leaves,
if they look, that would be the absolute worst case scenario. But if they don't win a cup and Gensel resigns, then I don't even know if we're talking about it in that case. So, and to be fair, to be abundantly fair, while I have loved what I have seen from Gabe Perreault over this stretch, it's a couple of games. Like, let's get a little further down the road with Gabe Perreault before we're saying that it was an insane idea to throw him in for a trade for Jake Gensel.
I'm not
I
saying it's
still think that's the
insane.
biggest.
I don't know if I would do.
It would
Also
cost
worth
like,
noting,
yeah,
Andrew Kopp. The reason that became a first round pick was because the Rangers made it to the Eastern Conference Final. So
correct.
like there was a running joke that Kopp apologized to Drury for costing the Rangers, and like not for nothing, by the way. It's funny when people talk about Chris Drury like buying high and making all these mistakes. I actually think that the 2022 trade deadline was some of the best work Chris
I think it was
Drury
good work.
did.
Yeah, agreed.
The Frank Vetrano trade was brilliant.
Yep.
The Cop
Maybe a
trade was
fourth
really
round pick.
good. Like it's worth noting, and I don't know this for a fact, but my speculation and from what I've heard, Patrick Kane wasn't necessarily Chris Drury's idea. And knowing what I know about the owner of the team, so be it. And again, I'm not trying to defend Chris Drury here. Like he's made his own bed with a variety of things. But I like the Cop six now, Andrew Mott? Tyler Mott.
Tyler
Tyler
Mott.
Mott, really smart trade. I don't know if I would have let him walk for free and then trade for him again the next year, but fine. Vladislav Tarasenko, totally fine business. Like Chris Drury has actually done a pretty
Vladimir.
good job. What'd I say?
Vladislav.
Sorry, Vladimir. You saved me from
You're
getting
messing up your
Charlie.
Vladis.
You know, Chris Drury's actually done a pretty good job when he's bought at the deadline. The Buchnevich trade, again, we can talk about ad nauseum and will continue to. The circumstances were different. Chris Drury fucked it up. Do not get me wrong. I'm not defending the man. He was trading him because he thought he was getting Jack Eichel, and he didn't, and which is admittedly worse.
I want to come back to the Kreider part of it. I'm willing to entertain. Well, he brings up Kreider as a selling low example, and he's got a secondary question here that we can dovetail into because I do want to address that a little more fulsomely. The Kakko part of it, like, I can entertain both sides of this argument, right? So like I think Capo Kakko is a useful player. I also think that like the time had just run out on Capo Kakko in New York. And while I'm willing again to entertain isn't that the kind of player that the Rangers would like to have, a young, cost-controlled guy who plays that kind of two-way game? Yeah, okay, sure. I hear you and all of that. I think the clock had run out on those two high draft picks that the Rangers had taken, and Lafreniere was going to be the guy that you held on to. So I'm going to address one more thing in this first question before going to the Kreider part. Showing his cards via the memo last year and the letter this year, I think two things on that. First, I just don't think it's that big of a
Yeah, I
factor.
fundamentally
I
disagree.
really do not think it is that big of a factor. These guys all talk to each other. If Chris Drury is making calls to teams, offering players and seeing what he can get for them, those guys are going to talk to each other. And everybody knows, again, that compared with where the Rangers were in the standings too, is going to result in everybody knowing that he is looking to move players. So the fact that there is some kind of public PR part of it, setting aside the impact that the memo had on the locker room, that's not the part of this that I'm analyzing here. It's just the fact that they know that he was looking to do business, I don't think made that big of a deal. But if you're willing to accept that argument and you do think it was that big of a deal, then you should be the first person celebrating Chris Drury for not just jumping on whatever the best trade offer out there
Correct.
for Vincent Trocheck was. Because I think that that was an example of the other GMs in the league seeing if he would cave at the last minute and seeing how desperate he was. And the fact that he was not willing to do it actually is something in his favor here, not a strike against him. So
Correct.
at
Set
a
boundaries.
minimum, you can only have it one of those ways. You can either think that it is, he showed his cards and, this is limiting trade returns or potentially limiting trade returns, in which case you got to turn around and say that absolutely he made the smart and right move in holding on to Trocheck. Or you can just accept what I do, which is I don't think it made all that big of a difference. Although I do think based on previous history, not the public stuff like you're referencing here, but I do think that there was a game of chicken going on between Drury and the other GMs. And he has now showed a willingness to say, no, I'm not doing anything until I get something that actually meets my criteria. Now, we'll see in the offseason what that actually produces when and if Vincent Trocheck is traded.
Yeah, you know what else signals that you're trading anything that's not nailed to the ground? A fucking top 5 loser record.
Yeah, for the
It's
second year
not
in a
like
row.
I agree if the Rangers were on the bubble, right, for a playoff berth and Chris Drury drops the letter 2.0, I would understand the argument a little bit more of like, hey, he didn't have to do that. He's signaling what he's doing. Everybody knew what the Rangers were doing. And then to your point, I think I made this point last show. There is something to be said for Chris Drury setting boundaries against the other general managers where it's like, you know what? I don't actually need to trade Vincent Trocheck. And guess what? I didn't. So now if you want him and I tell you you can't have him unless you're giving me X, Y, or Z, you should believe me because I didn't trade him when everybody thought I should have. And it caused this enormous fucking issue internally. Like, who cares?
Yeah, you're not just waiting on him to cave. Yeah.
Right. The Rangers, I will even give a pass on the ideology that general managers are not necessarily talking to one another in the way that like Chris Drury's certainly not going around like, hey guys, give me some phone calls. Like I'll do it. You know what I mean? But the Rangers record dictated the fact that they were going to be sellers. This is not like the Rangers were on the bubble. If the Rangers were 2 points out of a playoff berth right now and they dropped the letter, yeah, that's a surprise. Okay, why are we doing this? Why are we signaling this? Whatever. That's not what we're dealing with, though.
Let's take the Kreider part of this now. So the second question here from Elman. Isn't the Kreider trade just as bad as the original Sin Booch trade and just shows Drury doesn't learn from past mistakes? If the Rangers kept Kreider and moved Panarin instead last offseason, and assuming similar Kreider production, 21 goals, 42 points at present, doesn't he net a first or one or two other pieces if traded at this deadline? If teams were offering pennies, wouldn't the smart move from an asset management perspective been to get him healthy and productive before trading him? Note, Kreider was traded for a fourth and carried Terrence, at best a third or fourth center, and third, resulting in the Rangers moving up 15 spots. They did not even get a pick outright. Bush netted Blay and a second, which was then shipped again, this is massive overpay for Cop. I fundamentally disagree on the analysis of the Cop trade. So again, the problem with this analysis here, it is missing any and all context to all
Right.
of this.
Like, Kreider didn't
There,
want to be here.
I think that is absolutely true at the end there. And, again, this is kind of you can only have it one way with Drury, right? Either he is a guy who is just this merciless, heartless son of a bitch who is just going to do whatever he thinks is in his own individual pecuniary best self-interest, or, as he did in this case, he was willing to move Kreider to a place that he wanted to go because he was a franchise icon and somebody who had been there for so long, and he was willing to work with him considering the way that things had fallen out in the previous season. Um, the comparison to the Booch trade makes absolutely zero sense to me. The Booch trade didn't need to be made, as far as I'm concerned. It was an error in the sense that there was the assumption that Jack Eichel was going to be coming in. So it was an unforced error in that let's just assume that you felt you did need to move him, like you thought the contract was going to be too big. I think that was an early sense of desperation that other GMs picked up on, in this case, Doug Armstrong in St. Louis. And yeah, the return for Booch was not at all impressive. Look, he could have been merciless with the Kreider situation, and people probably would have beat the shit out of him for doing that too. And it probably would have caused all kinds of continuing problems because the players clearly were having problems with Chris Drury at this point. Um, yeah, it's like, would I have liked more for in return for Chris Kreider? Yeah, absolutely, I would have. But it is like a version of the Susie trade too, where you're doing the guy a solid by moving him to some place that he wants to go. Which is, and again, it's not in even the Susie case where it's just you're doing it because he's got a newborn and he wants to stay local. Chris Kreider was an icon with this franchise, and you're allowing him, when it's coming to an ignominious end, to say, like, I like to go to Anaheim. All right, I'll swing a deal with Anaheim. And maybe that is not smart, but then you also can't turn around and give me the shit for Chris Drury when he is a heartless son of a bitch. Like, you got to pick a lane.
Yeah, the Rangers certainly seem to have allowed Kreider to pick his destination when he was leaving. It is a tough pill to swallow when i- if the Rangers had traded Chris Kreider a year sooner rather than a year later, I don't think the Rangers do what they did. I don't necessarily think there was a ton of interest in Chris Kreider. And some of that was the injury piece. Some of that was he was having one of the worst seasons he had ever had. You're right in that analysis ignores the fact that Chris Kreider also wanted to leave the New York Rangers. And Chris Drury course corrected. Now we can make an argument and a case one way or another about whether or not that course correction was too violent, but he course corrected and wanted to, make sure that people knew that he wasn't this like blasphemous, I'm just going to do whatever I did. Remember, the locker room tore itself apart over Barclay Goodrow. So again, I don't know what else you fucking want me to tell you. It's just the truth. So
Can I just throw just because I just saw it, a random stat out at you here that's basically too good to check, but I have no reason to believe it's not true. Um, since JT Miller returned to the lineup, the Rangers
okay,
have been outshot. Do you want to take a guess at the margin?
by 20,
72-27.
seemed good.
That's not good. Doesn't sound good. Does not seem good.
Yeah, look. I would actually accept the argument that Chris Drury should have gotten the most value out of Kreider and, fuck his feelings and who cares.
Sure.
Genuinely. I honestly would accept that argument.
I would accept that
Susie, I
too.
don't accept that argument, but I'll accept that
No,
argument for Kreider.
but
And
I'll
I
accept
don't
the
know what was on
argument.
the table. You have no idea what was on the table.
I'll accept the argument, but then your criticism has to pick a lane,
Correct.
right?
I've been
He
begging for
can't
that all year.
like it. If you want him to be heartless and merciless in order to get the most value extracted for every possible player, then you've got to be fine with the consequences of a GM who is heartless and merciless when it comes to the dealings with players. Or you can want him to be a little fuzzier, in which case that's going to show up in cases like going to Chris Kreider and saying, where do you want to go? I will facilitate that, even if it is to the detriment of the total return. Pick a lane. Just pick one.
Want to go to the next question? We're basically on questions at this point.
I think so. There's not a hell of a lot else to talk about. Nicole Vitale. Borgen has dropped down to the third pair pretty consistently. Elliot Friedman said teams are very willing to trade for players with term this coming offseason. What are the odds he goes?
I think they're honestly 50-50.
I think so too.
I don't think the Rangers are married to keeping Will Borgen around. I think the Rangers are more than willing to basically take offers on anyone. I don't think Will Borgen has looked particularly good, to be completely honest with you. Now, the
He was
Rangers in
better at the beginning
general,
of the season. He's been worse lately, I think.
yeah,
But
there were some rumors that he was hurt too, right? So, like, and again, you don't know because the Rangers fucking play guys hurt and they don't even think twice about it. So it's impossible for us to tell. I, I would tell you that if Will Borgen's not on the New York Rangers next year, I'm not crying into my Cheerios. That's
no,
fine by
not at
me.
all. I get that. There's also, again, there's a context part of this that I think needs to be added as well, which is signing Will Borgen as soon as they did after trading for him. I think it is perfectly fair to question that in a vacuum. But when you look at what, we just saw a game against the LA Kings who have Cody Ceci and Brian Dumoulin.
Uh,
Dumoulin has been reasonably good this year, paid more than Will Borgen. Cody Ceci is one of the worst defensemen in the National Hockey League and paid more than Will Borgen. So I think reading what the upcoming market was going to be for defensemen and signing him to that deal was a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So I'm not I'm not crying any tears or losing any sleep over that. But again, I'm with you. I have no, I- if a cost controlled, second pair, third pair on a really good team, defenseman like Will Borgen is going to bring you back some reasonable asset in the offseason, yeah, by all means, move him.
Yeah, look, that's another one of those circumstances where Chris Drury read the market correctly, realized that there were going to be some insane contracts handed out because of the cap increases. Look, this is another example of Chris Drury getting married really, really quickly. Probably could have waited to see what the Will Borgen experience was like for more than 17 games, locked him down, and then was proven right over the summer when Poparov got like $8.5 million a year. Cody Ceci and Dumoulin were getting a significant amount of money. It's
Yeah,
just like
yeah. It was silly season.
this is why you lock guys in the way that Chris Drury locked guys in. Remember too, the Rangers were looking for boring defensemen. Like Vladislav Gavrikov is exactly what then he's been flashier than I think they expected in all the right ways. Like he's been great for the New York Rangers. It's just a matter of the Rangers didn't have enough slow and steady, and I don't mean slow in terms of skating speed. They have plenty of slow guys. Just boring, non-high event hockey players. And they needed them. And they got one in Will Borgen. I agree with you. I think he looked much better at the beginning of the year, which is kind of alarming, honestly, because we've discussed this. Mike Sullivan basically just shits out quality defensemen. And for Will Borgen to get worse as the season goes on, if he's not hurt, leads me to believe that there's something deeper there. There's definitely a concern. But my entire argument about the Vincent Trocheck piece, which, by the way, let me give some flowers to Vincent Trocheck. I've been a pretty big detractor of him. He seems to have taken all this shit in stride. I've not seen an ounce of the Jacob Trouba, like, piss and vinegar in the locker room, letting shit like he's out there laughing with guys. He's hanging out, seems to be taking people under, like, everything seems to be the way that you would want it to be. And I just think he deserves flowers for that. I get it. He's playing so that he can go somewhere else next year and he wants to win a Stanley Cup. I understand, but he's at least doing the right thing rather than JT Miller, like, not being on the ice at all and then taking pictures with the team after wins. Like, that whole like, oh, the Rangers are taking these funny photos. Like, look, the locker room's back. It just drives me nuts because it could have been like this in October and it wasn't. Somebody explain to me why. Anyway,
Question from Chip. Do Panarin's comments about fans here not caring anymore change your opinion of him? Do they paint a clearer picture of why keeping him wasn't an option? And he shares a link to the comment from him is about facing Igor Shesterkin. I hope he has a bad night tonight. Sorry, New York Rangers fans, but you don't care this year anymore. Eh, eh,
I didn't take it as
eh,
a shot at the fans as much
eh.
as Chip did. It got Chip's hair up a little bit. His hair doesn't get up very often. He also doesn't have hair.
There's not much hair to have
So,
to get up there.
I didn't necessarily take it that way, that it was a shot at the, like, I much more thought JT Miller's and then they were booing again comment was more of a shot at the fans than this was. I think
I
this
agree.
is yeah, the Ranger fans don't really care anymore this year. Like, he's right.
Like-
He's not wrong. It's not like, oh, Ranger fans don't care. He talked about how special the building and the fans were. He even said, like, when the fans boo you 17 seconds into the game, like, I love that. He kind of leaned into it a little bit. I didn't take it as that at all. That's not what is swaying me here is Panarin being like, "Well, they didn't want me. Like this was a one-man show, the reason that I'm not here in New York anymore." It's like, dude, no, it isn't. So,
Rangers fan born after 1994. What do you make of Lafreniere's play? Obviously a good sign, but do you think this is garbage time performances, or do you think this can carry on to something better?
where are we getting the garbage time performance piece? Out of curiosity, and this isn't just to
So
you, Rangers fan born after 1994. Like a lot of people, even Phil talked about this. I just like what because the Rangers are bad. Yeah, the
the
Rangers
Rangers,
suck. If
the
nothing
Rangers are
else,
bad.
it's
They
all the
have
more reason that this is impressive.
Okay, well, I guess I'll steelman the argument that they would make in this case, which is this is well after they've surrendered the season. The games
Okay,
don't matter.
okay,
And they have been playing, for the most part, other bad teams.
okay,
So you're seeing him put up great numbers in games that don't matter, when the competition is probably not at its peak, when it's not
okay.
being challenged in the contested in the best way possible. Yeah, it's like, it would the equivalent would be like, someone hitting a whole bunch of threes in the fourth quarter when you're down by 30 points. Like, yeah, you're just not there. Those shots aren't being contested in the same way because even if you hit them, it doesn't really contribute fundamentally to the changing the outcome of the game.
Yeah, but I guess the difference, and I know you're just making the argument. I guess the difference in that analogy is you're not going up against one team. Like if 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 he was not doing this against teams that we think he should be, we would be rightfully ripping him to pieces. The piece of this that I think people are forgetting is the Rangers are a terrible hockey team themselves. There really is no garbage ti Yeah, there's garbage time and that the games didn't matter. If the concern is that Lafreniere doesn't get his shit up when the games matter, he was the Rangers' best forward against the Florida Panthers 2 years ago in the Eastern Conference Final, and it wasn't even close. So, like, we've already kind of seen him be that guy when he's needed to be that guy. Now, we haven't seen it in the regular season, and we haven't seen it since. Not since he got his contract. So, like, there, obviously there's concerns there. I'm not suggesting that. But the whole garbage time piece of like, well, the games don't matter. So, like, now Lafreniere is stepping up. We didn't see Lafreniere stepping up at all.
I think that the part of it that you may be missing there is they're not being played as hard by other teams because they don't have to exert themselves in the same way because the Rangers are bad. So there's like a
Yes.
lot more soft defense that he can exploit.
But the Rangers have been bad on offense and defense. And for him to be creating
Fair
offense
enough.
is, to me, like, that it's not. Look, if in the basketball analogy, right, you're up by 40. Yeah, people are like not guarding you. Eh, You can't tell me that, it's not like Calgary wasn't trying. And I get it. Calgary's also bad. Like I do understand. But it's just I just don't think the argument holds as much weight as it's not the gotcha that people think it
Fair enough.
is.
So then you're of the mind that we're seeing something positive and real from Lafreniere that
I,
could extend forward.
I am of the mind that I am seeing something positive and real right now. And that Alexis Lafreniere has done things like this before and it has not lasted, and I would like to see it last.
That is where I was going with this, which is let me see it for an entire
Correct.
season,
Yes. I need to see
and
it for
then
much longer than this.
but I'm perfectly willing to be fairly excited about what we've seen from him and Perreault and from Mika with that whole first line. I think they've looked, all things considered, pretty good together.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
I just
tonight's a good example too, by the
more and more
way.
consistent.
Monday night, where I thought that line was the best line the Rangers had by a mile. Perreault hit the post. He had another great
Mhm.
opportunity that didn't go in. Lafreniere had a couple of chances. Like all of them, actually, I think Mika had an assist. But, Lafreniere and Perreault get no points in that game. And I think they were some of the best forwards that the Rangers had. So again, there is a little bit of nuance here, but like they were really good. They need to continue to be really good.
Sean Avery's acting coach. Will this be Quick's last season? My bet and hope is he defies everyone and signs another one-year deal. If this wasn't the team he grew up rooting for, he probably would retire.
I
I
don't know
think
if that's true.
yeah, what I think is interesting is, after the game, all the Rangers players stayed on the ice to, give one for Anze Kopitar, who is retiring after this season. I do think it is interesting the players who are, that celebrated, guys who are on their way to the Hall of Fame. Some of them want to do this kind of last year, goodbye tour kind of
Eh.
thing, and some of them don't. So I don't know that anything would surprise me with Quick at this point. Now, obviously, of course, if he had already announced and he was doing the goodbye tour, we would know. But if he just kind of quietly decided like, no, I'm done after this season, and he's just like not the kind of guy who wanted to have that spotlight on him for the course of an entire season, especially like in a backup role, I can understand that. So I don't think anything would be all that surprising. I will refer people to a really good piece that was it Chris? I think it was Chris who wrote. Let me double check here real quick about the Rangers' goaltending needs. And the Rangers are going to have, yes, it was Chris, goaltending, a growing need for the New York Rangers.
Made many people on Facebook angry, by the way. Like, the amount of people that don't read the article is insane to me.
Yes. Well, that's always a thing. He makes a good point, right? They have not given Dylan Garand, any spot starts. They signed Spencer Martin in order to give him meaningless starts. The best argument you can make is that you don't want to throw Garand into the fire of this disaster of a team. But on the other
Correct.
hand, go ahead and throw him into the fire of this disaster of a team and see how he does. Uh, and beyond that, there's just not a whole lot in the cabinet for the Rangers when it comes to goaltending right now. So I am look, whatever Jonathan Quick wants at this point, if he sticks around for one more season, at worst, it seems to cost Dylan Garand, who might be like a fringe, an NHL backup / fringe starter. That might seems like it's probably his ceiling. That delays that for 1 year. I don't know that it's that huge of a loss, but if he does decide to retire, then we find out what Dylan Garand has, or they go out and they sign some other veteran backup goaltender.
Yeah, if Igor Shesterkin's staying, it almost doesn't matter. Whether it's Garand or Martin or Jonathan Quick, it is what it is.
Yeah, we'd always have these conversations, right, with Hank, where it was, the rotating cast behind him. Like even in a vacuum, there's nothing to be thrilled about in signing Andrei Pavlich as a backup goaltender. But when he's backing up Henrik Lundqvist, how much does it really matter? Because the fundamental calculus of that situation is if it matters who the New York Rangers backup goaltender is,
You have a bigger
then
problem.
everything is lost anyway. So what does it matter?
Right. That's where like Cam Talbot in that 2015 season was
Yep.
so important because
And
Henrik Lundqvist got hurt and you needed a guy to step in.
you got stints like that too from Antti Ranta also
Correct.
had like another good stint like that. So yeah, it doesn't matter to have good backup goaltending in case you don't want to completely fall out of contention because your starter got hurt. But come playoff time, all that matters is that your starting goaltender is healthy when the starting goaltender is one of the best players on the team.
Yeah, and just to answer the question, do you think Jonathan Quick is back next year? I would guess if I had to make a bet, next year is Quick's last year.
Seems reasonable to me. Nicole Vitale, answer this not with what you want to happen, but rather what you believe will happen.
Already I'm scared of the question.
Connor Sheary gets signed another year to be a fourth liner / 13 forward. If Edstrom can really play center, I wouldn't hate a fourth line of, God, they're going to make me say his name again. Shemlash?
There's no C in it. I also don't know what it is, but
There
no
is a C in it. There is a C in it.
Not in the-
Chemlar.
I get it. There's no C in the way that the name is pronounced.
I don't know.
It's like Hemler or something.
Hemlash, yeah, something like that. I apologize to him. I will remember it maybe by next season.
I have to learn it first. It's not even like I forget it. I haven't even figured it out.
Him, Edstrom with Sheary / Dylan Rubrek if he's ready, or whatever cheap signing that they can find in the offseason.
It's hard to answer this question with what I think and not what I want, because I vehemently do not want Connor Sheary here.
I don't want Connor Sheary back.
There's no
either.
reason for him to be here.
There's no reason, yeah.
I would actually genuinely be surprised if he was here. I just don't see it. I don't think he brings anything to the table that Brett Berard doesn't bring, and I don't think Brett Berard is anything special.
Well,
Adam Sikora,
the thing he brings to the table that Brett Berard doesn't bring is a career of NHL experience
yeah,
and
sure.
Stanley Cups that he's won, which is just back to the point that when they signed him, the thoughts about where the season was going were entirely different than they are now and where they are going to be for the next couple of seasons. I can
And
understand
having
an
him play
argument
16 minutes
for
a night is terrible.
I can understand an argument for bringing a guy like that, who the coach clearly likes, who has won championships before, into a team that you have some aspirations for. There's absolutely no reason to have him on a team like the Rangers are going to be next year.
Yeah, no need. Like Adam Sikora is going to need time too, by the way.
Yes.
We've not even mentioned that name, but the Rangers just have too many pieces here that they just no thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. Couple more from Nicole. Do you think Rempe is pushed out of the lineup for next season with how this year is finishing off? I think we've seen the last of Matt Rempe as a Ranger.
I don't think we've seen the last of Matt Rempe.
Really?
I think we should have seen the last of Matt Rempe, but I think he's been injured enough when things were bad that there's going to give the organization an excuse to say, hey, okay, see what next year brings when he's healthy. Mike Sullivan loves him. To be fair to Matt Rempe and Adam Edstrom made a really nice 1-2 punch earlier in the year when they were both healthy. So he's free. There's no reason not to try it if you're Mike Sullivan. I'm with you. I think I've seen enough. I don't need to see anything else, but we're here.
Are the Rangers the trap game other contending teams aren't taking seriously now that they are out of it? That's from Nicole Vitale. It clearly was not true of the Los Angeles Kings.
Yeah, also the Rangers are not good enough to be a trap game. So.
Or Jorts. Down the middle were Zibanejad, Miller, and Trocheck. All are 32-33. Should we be concerned that we don't really have any young players at center, or do we have prospects coming? We really do not have any prospects coming, and we should be concerned about the Rangers' center depth and center age. That's my answer.
Was that a question or was that a comment?
That was the last part of it was my answering of the question.
Yeah, I agree. The Rangers have no prospects of note now that Gabe Perreault is up here. The prospects of note that they do have, like Sikora and Rubrek and Brody Lamb just came up. Like, none of these guys are game changers. The only other player that can theoretically be something more than like a depth piece is Scott Morrow. And we've seen some pretty compelling evidence that he needs to figure out the defensive side of the game to even be an NHL player. So everything's fine.
Skip a couple of questions because we've mostly answered them already, and I'm going to go to a question from Chip. What do you think of the way Sullivan has recently been experimenting with Adam Edstrom? Listening to him after games, the way Sullivan talks about Edstrom and Shemlash, it certainly, I'm just going to say that, whatever, certainly feels like he sees the upside of being greater than fourth line minutes. I think this is part of my answer to the Rempe question, which is I think that current construction of the fourth line, plus with the other, look, if there's one thing that the Rangers have an abundance of in their prospect pool, it's bottom six guys. And it's
Correct.
mostly guys who seem to have like an absolute ceiling of a third line. All the more reason why, like, I think there was something interesting and compelling about Matt Rempe once upon a time. I just think that there are other players that, while they give some in terms of size and the intimidation factor to Rempe, they possess more in terms of like actual hockey skill. So that's partly where I'm coming down in the Rempe answer. And also, yeah, it's apparently been a while since Edstrom has played center, but I think we were all a little terrified when we found out Miller was returning in the Minnesota game, what those lines were going to look like. And then seeing that it was going to be Edstrom at center was like, oh, okay, this is actually interesting now. So
correct.
I like that they're playing around with that. And if they can turn Edstrom into an effective fourth line center, then that may be the best utilization they could possibly get from him.
Yeah, you no longer have Sam Carrick. Edstrom is an actual hockey player. Everything that Rempe isn't from that perspective, Edstrom is. He's also enormous. He's a big boy out there, just a big boy. It's fine. He's a fine player. Like you said, he's a depth guy. He's never going to be anything more than a third line winger at his absolute best. And if you can make him a fourth line center, then so be it. The Rangers need those too. But Adam Edstrom's a nice little player. I haven't hated the way that Sullivan's been experimenting with it. I've been hating the other experiments that he's done. It's so strange. Sullivan has been, I think, really good with the depth, really good with just kind of letting those guys settle, figuring things out. He's definitely taken a more nuanced approach with Gabe Perreault, even though he took Perreault off the top power play minutes or top power play unit. And like, he says the right things. And then he'll take Perreault off the top power play unit. And Vladislav Gavrikov is the power play one quarterback while Adam Fox is out. I'm having trouble figuring out. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I know exactly who Mike Sullivan is and isn't prioritizing just by some of the decisions he's making. I'm having trouble following the logic for some of those decisions. But it is nice to have a coach that actually like says the things about development.
That's pretty much does it for questions.
Wow, an hour and 10 minutes. Can we end the show this early?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining. BlueShirtBanter.com, BlueShirtBanter.com/BlueShirtBanter, YouTube.com/BlueShirtBanter, Facebook.com/BlueShirtBanter, BlueShirtBanter. Oh, you already did that one. Twitter.com/BlueShirt, X.com/BlueShirtBanter. Like, how does that work?
It is X.com, yes.
X.com/BlueShirtBanter or Twitter.com/BlueShirtBanter will get you to the
Still
same
works.
place. Spotify, Apple iTunes, whatever you want. Listen to us. We're here. Eric, anything to add before we hit the hay? It's pretty late.
It is pretty late. No, I have nothing else to add.
The tank is back on. It's the most important
Tank
part.
is on.
$85 a year gets you all your ad-free access to the New York Rangers at BlueShirtBanter.com. $40 a year gets you access to our Discord. You can do fun things there. Let's dance. Outside of that, we will see you all next week. Bye for now.